Okay, so this video, I'm going to show you 3 different horses and a technique that we call flagging while lunging. And it's really important to do before you ever put a first ride on a horse. And it's good to revisit it frequently afterwards. So this is one of these Salt River Spanish Mustangs, and he's always been very afraid of things behind him and really afraid of things touching his hind end. And you can see here he's come a long way. This is exactly what we want them to look like when we consider them finished with this technique. And I will, frequently revisit it even after, since he's already been going under saddle. So I would like him to walk and not feel the need to trot off. Saw he did a little bit there, and I just patiently let him come back down. But you see how relaxed he is and focused. He's not bothered by it. He's not flinching with it. That's what I want. And I'll even, when I swing that flag up, which is what I'm doing here, is I will swing it up with some noise and some energy. And it shouldn't mean anything unless I ask him. See, I lifted my right hand there and asked him to trot off. He should be able to ignore that flag unless there's a cue before it. And so here I'm doing it at a trot. You could see he's a little more uncomfortable doing it at a trot, and that's okay. I just keep very, very rhythmically going up and down, touching it on the saddle. It makes noise. Coming up behind him, touching his butt with it, making noise with the flag when I come up behind him. And so here I put my left hand up. I told him to go, and I could use my flag to create energy there, as well as I gave him the cue to trot, which for me is 2 clicks. It's just that means trot after I put my finger up or my hand up. But this is great. You see how he's got a nice bend. His ear is on me. He's paying attention. He's a little confused there. He's trying to maintain the trot. I'm walking around that mounting block, which is in the way. So this horse is so sensitive and responsive that if I block his drive line at all, he will stop. That means if I go in front of his shoulder and I block his drive line. So I had to just keep walking around there. And then every time after you use anything, you should always make sure that you desensitize him with whatever you're working on, that we're still good with this. So I'm touching him with the flag in all his little special places, and then I'll swing it up and make some noise there. You could see how you see him flinch a little bit there with it going under his flank. But he controlled it, and that's really good. He's always been very sensitive in that flank area, but this work has really helped him to relax in that area. We have a theory that these salt rivers all seem to be kind of sensitive in that area, and we think it's because of how they were gelded. These are not BLM horses. They all seem to have some trauma around that, their sheath and that area that we're having to work through. And this one, I do use positive reinforcement with this horse, and he does great with it. So that last horse is what we want it to look like when we consider the horse confident with this exercise. This is Picado. He is a 5-year-old gelding for the Nevada Wild Horse Range. He's a BLM Mustang. Same thing, very sensitive in his body. This is a great exercise for him. He's always been a little bit wary of this flag. So I've been working a lot with it, incorporating into our regular training. So I'm just checking here with him and I use positive reinforcement with him as well. It's worked really great. And this particular horse, he gets anxiety with the food, so I use cubes. So it takes him a long time to chew them up, and it works really good for getting him to relax and not be too excited about the food. And so I'm just checking to make sure where he's at. If you notice, I'm not doing a lot of flank belly rubbing with the flag on this one because he's not quite ready for that. Don't want to cause a whole lot of trauma or anything on him. I found that when I kind of got him moving and touched him there, he was real kicky with this. So we're just building his confidence and his trust. And so this is great. Like he's where he's at right now on the ground without movement is where we want to start him with movement. So you see how relaxed he was with no movement. That's where I want him. I can make noise with that flag. I can touch them all over. And then that's what they should be like before we start to incorporate movement with the desensitizing. Just kind of cleaning up my area a little bit. So he's a little confused there. He's same thing. He's super responsive and wants to please. So this is, I would like him to walk, but this is okay. He wants to trot, that's fine. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to bring my flag up, and he got a little worried. So right now I'm just going to hold my flag. So you kind of start where your horse is willing to let you start. And he's kind of pulling on me a little bit. And so there, he's softer. So then I can start just rhythmically swinging the flag since he got used to me just holding it there. I really don't want them trotting unless I ask them to trot. If they trot initially, I'll do like what I did there, just hold my flag up until they start to relax and slow down on their own. And then I'll go to the next step. So with this horse, I really want to encourage him to understand what I'm wanting is the relaxation and not to be reactive to that flag. And so like I will use positive reinforcement. And so it's very typical for them to want to stop because they think that the minute you start desensitizing, they need to stop and freeze. And so that's why this exercise is so important, because it really stops them from wanting to fall into freeze, and for us to not recognize that they're in freeze and not actually accepting of what we're doing. So if you're able to desensitize while moving, then you know that your horse is actually desensitized. If you can't desensitize while moving, then your horse is likely going into freeze while you're desensitizing, while they're standing still. So here I went ahead and just letting him know when I swing that flag and I get no reaction, I get no flinch in his body. You really want to look for that flinching. He almost ignores me a little bit. And then I'll treat and reward because he's like, oh, okay, I'm not worried about that. So this is a new direction, and he tends to be spookier this way. I just know that from working him. And so like you see, I'm just holding my flag up, kind of following with it until I start to get a little relaxation right there. Did you see him just, oh, okay, he started to soften a little bit. And so now I'm just kind of reading my horse, right? Like I want to push his thresholds, but not so bad that he's no longer learning. So I got a little nervous when I touched him there. And so I'm just slowing down a little bit. I'm asking him to kind of listen to my halter because if you look, you see he's kind of looking out like he's like, oh, I don't want to be here. This is too scary. So if your horse is getting really upset with this exercise, you just slow it down. Just slow everything down. If they stop, just very gently ask them to walk again, because it's normal for them to want to stop and freeze there because they think that when you desensitize, they're supposed to stop. Yeah, I'm just asking him. See, he's a little anxious, so he's like, "What do you want me to do next?" And all I want to do is just click and treat. So I even gave a little extra there to give him just a moment to kind of come down. So we get them, this is just great in how we get them a little bit worried, and then we bring them back down. We get them a little bit worried and we bring them back down. And that's going to help his resiliency to handle situations, to handle being ridden, to handle going places, to handle spooky things. I'm creating some resiliency here by repeatedly getting him up and kind of bringing him back down a little bit, but not pushing him too far. So I'm not sure if I asked him to lope or to trot there. I probably didn't hear it. Like, I'm not going to be too much of a stickler when they're just learning something about maintaining gait. I just need forward motion, but I don't want them rip roaring around. That means I've got way too much of a nervous horse to have him rip roaring around. So if I have a horse that's like that, maybe I'll do something else to get some of their energy out, or I will try and insist that they walk a little bit more, maybe make that circle a little bit smaller. Put my flag just down in front of me on the ground. Anything that I can do to lessen the scariness of it and to teach them that the idea is to be relaxed. The idea is not to move. So if you have a really sensitive, hotter horse, you might have to just be a little more patient, and it can get frustrating, but just realize that you try to break it down as much as possible. Okay, so that was Picado. That's kind of where he's at. He's like, I would say, middle of the road with this exercise. Canelo, who you saw first, he was definitely what I considered finished with this exercise. We just revisit it periodically, but he's pretty finished with it. And this is Paloma. Paloma is a very, very hot and sensitive mare. She was Citro's 2019 Mustang Magic mare. And I mean, even like, see, putting her halter on, like this horse has been haltered like a million times. But I can't just like walk up and do it because she's super just sensitive, even though she's very well trained. So this is an exercise we visit frequently with her. Because we're just constantly desensitizing this mare. She actually spooked the other day while I put the halter on her and launched herself off my foot. Did not feel very good. But that's just who she is. She's a Frisco, Utah, tend to be one of the harder HMAs. And so here you can tell she's pretty good with the flag while she's standing still. I can make noise with it. I can touch her with it. Still working on touching her right ear. She's funny about her right ear. She's always been funny about her right ear. It's gotten really good with positive reinforcement, but still working on that. It's a work in progress for sure. And she also gets positive reinforcement. I do cues with her as well because she tends to get a little overly excited about the food. Canelo, who you saw first, I actually use pretty high reward treats with him because he doesn't get overly excited about food. And it's actually kind of brought his personality out a little bit, that the food. So he gets saddle snacks because I need a high reward food for him to stay engaged. So same thing with her, kind of starting here. I was going to I kind of wanted to have a horse that would start to have a little bit of problems, so you can kind of see what we do when they're just learning this. She did really good with that, and I was surprised. It's always the ones that you're like, oh, this will be a good one. It'll get some problem on the video and see how we work through it, and then they act perfect when you video. So we have some new ones coming in for training, and so I'll definitely grab some more video of this kind of in action if you would like, on a horse that's greener, that hasn't had it done at all. But you see how it makes that noise? So I really swing that up, make a little bit of noise of it's coming up behind her. Super useful. Like you have a horse coming up behind you, somebody coming up behind you, and they make noise. And you're teaching them right now not to react to that noise. Even though they may still, at least you've kind of built up this resiliency here. So it's not such a horrific thing. So kind of very similar to see somewhere between Canelo and Picado, which is kind of funny because like under saddle, this horse is really, really broke. But even these broken ones, if you have a sensitive horse, you should always keep revisiting these types of things to make sure that they understand and they're okay. She's a very feely, sensitive, spooky horse. I'm letting her kind of chew and process there a little bit. It's also good to see horses that actually know how to lunge. They should have a bend in them. They should be very soft and responsive. You shouldn't be nagging them to keep them moving. This is what it should look like. So this is interesting right here is she does not like me on her left side. She always blocks the left side. Now that we've had this horse for over 3 years, almost 4 years now, right? No, 3 years. I can't add. Yeah, about 3.5 years. So that's how long we've had her. And she will still block me on the left side. And so what I'm doing there is when I ask her to disengage, she will move her hind end over and then move her front end over to block that side. And that's not what she should be doing. She should just be, this is perfect. See how she just yielded the hind end? That's what I want her to do. And then so this is the way that she's like happy if I'm on that side. She will, even when you lead her, she wants to be on your left side. And it gets really weird because if I'm not paying attention, like she'll be all of a sudden on that side, and I'm like, oh, I was planning on you being on the other side. It's this direction that she spooks more, and she blocks often. She doesn't want anybody on that side. So what I want you to see here is when I ask her to stop, and I'm just, doing this desensitizing thing. You can kind of see what it looks like. When I ask her to stop, watch, she steps over. She says she stepped over with her left leg, and she moved the left shoulders over. And I'm correcting her here by having her disengage that haunch right there. And she's kind of confused. She thinks I want her to dance. I don't want her to dance. She kind of does this booty shake thing. I think I made a TikTok of it. So there, I'm just correcting her, saying move your butt over. And so I believe I should, I'm just kind of reinforcing that I want her to move her haunch over. Because I really don't want her to keep blocking me on that. And so that's why it's so important. You're very, very aware of what your horse is doing all the time, because that is something that will be a bigger problem later on. If I don't fix it here and say, hey, no, you disengage that whole hind end and don't move your shoulder and block me. And so I'm showing her, this is what I want that to look like. But it's you have to be that aware, because that will end up being a problem later. It'll be a problem with her being uneven. It'll be a problem with, we will tend to work the easier side and not the harder side, which will make them uneven. And it can cause her to, she's pushing into me when she does that. See, that was better. See how she tried to turn her head and block, but she didn't step. So that was good. But yeah, it'll turn into, you never want them to move into you at all, because then you're going to have a horse that runs over you. It's really easy to get hurt. It's very preventable if we're just super aware. And you can just see how I corrected that is, that little one, I just pulled her head back over, and then before I just really disengaged that hind end so she knew what I was talking about. And I would watch that a little bit where she steps into me there. I don't like that. Did you see how spooky she is? I pulled that up just out of nowhere because she wasn't focused, and she spooked a little bit. She's there, she spooked again. She always makes me jump when she spooks. It drives me crazy. So I'm working on her ear right here. I just kind of left this in here. It's not really part of the desensitizing while moving, but it's just a matter of, I discovered a little problem with that spook, and don't leave the problems so they turn into bigger problems. Just go ahead and fix it right there. Same thing here. I'm just kind of inching closer to her ear, and I'm using positive reinforcement to kind of counter condition this being a negative experience to being something that she feels good about. There, that was really good. She's like, I want my treats. Look at her. She's so funny. With this horse, where she's at with positive reinforcement is, once I do these hay cubes, or these chunks of hay cubes, and she's kind of satiated with them, I can move to a little bit of a higher reward, like a alfalfa pellet or something like that, and she'll be much more relaxed. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Please comment any questions. I'll be happy to answer them, and any requests for future videos.